All right, guys, welcome back to Game and Compute. Welcome back to the podcast. Just kind of going through the episodes on my podcast, trying to do separate blog posts about them. Today's tidbits, we're gonna talk a bit about an episode that I watched recently. So let me see what the title is. I hope you guys have been good. I've been a little absent, but when I'm absent lately, it's because I'm absent from this specific podcast, not that I'm not working on anything. So in my opinion for myself, that is me staying on track. But yeah, I've got some analyzing I'm trying to do. I want to start doing some slight reviews on some of the content that I watch. It might be repetitive, so I don't really know how people are going to take to it, but I like watching certain podcasts. I try to keep track of who posts what when. I know the Iced Coffee Hour with Jack and Stefan is on Sundays. I also follow a podcast by Lex Friedman. I also follow Bieheza's YouTube channel. And, I want to talk about some of the interesting things that I come across. Now, just because I find them interesting doesn't mean everybody's going to find them interesting. And just because I'm going to mention some things here doesn't mean that the whole podcast was about certain things. It's just I'm choosing to focus on things that for me kind of resonated and popped out and made me kind of think. And I figure, if I'm thinking about it in a certain way, there must be other people that found it important as well. I'm not a person to be here to bash people or to try to get people deleted or canceled or anything like that. And I might have some flaws in the way that I explain things because, again, I was multitasking while I was listening to this podcast. I was watching the Iced Coffee Hour, the latest episode that was... So if you don't watch the Iced Coffee Hour, they pick someone who is a millionaire or wealthy from either a side hustle or YouTubing, podcasting, some type of entrepreneurial task that they've taken upon themselves to create their own financial wealth and their own businesses. Many of these people talk about their stories, how they got started. And again, a lot of them, it's not overnight. So a lot of the stories of these people began years ago, but a lot of them are on the younger end. I'm not sure of the oldest person that they've interviewed, but they tend to interview younger people that tend to be in their 30s and 40s, some even in their 20s. I think there was somebody probably in his 50s or so. And I don't know if it was part of the Iced Coffee Hour where Stefan was talking to Kevin O'Leary. But anyways, this recent episode was interviewing TechLead, TechLead as one word. He's a YouTuber overall and a programmer, and he explains the details of what he does for programming. You may know him from the what's it called, the Million Coin. I don't know exactly what. Let me look it up. I think it's called Million Coin, or $1 million coin or something like that. He made that coin. The episode on Iced Coffee Hour is called Confronting Tech Lead About Everything, and in parentheses, as a millionaire. The conversation was interesting. He went into some depths about personal value of finance, money, reasons why or why not people would get into wanting to be a millionaire. Some interesting points that he mentioned. This is going to be a complete spoiler, guys. I should probably just mention that. I mean, if you haven't watched it, maybe watch the episode first. It's 151 minutes or so. An hour and 51 minutes or so, and it's out today. And so I like the titles that Graham and Jack choose about confronting and things like that. But I mean, it's usually an interview conversation. He initially was talking about the concept of, becoming a millionaire. Well, this isn't I'm not going in an actual order, but he was talking about being a millionaire and how by the time you're 60 or so or near retirement, if you've been contributing to retirement and on track with that, you're likely to be a millionaire anyways if you've been on like a track since your working years. He mentioned something like if you're making $30,000 a year for 30 years, I don't know if anybody of people who are, it doesn't mean that everybody can save that much, but then it's like technically you're nearly a millionaire at that point, right? You're just under, as far as the being able to have made $1 million within your lifetime. Now, a lot of that obviously would have been spent if you're only making $30,000, but if you find a way to make $30,000 a year, if that's what you're having in profit, then after all of your expenses, then you're technically going to be a millionaire near your 60s or so, or if you after 30 years of working at $30,000 a year. Now, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are making over $30,000 in this day and age, especially with the economy as it is. But another point these are just this kind of food for thought, right? Because they're kind of talking about the value of being a millionaire in a younger age versus, the fact that you could potentially just be a millionaire eventually anyways. So there was kind of this conversation between if you're, striving for it, is it worth the struggle when you're young to try to attain the $1 million status in your finances, or is it better to just live your life on working a 9 to 5 and not having a side hustle and not maybe really liking your work, which a lot of people do get forced to live a lifestyle where they might not really actually enjoy the work that they do, but they have to make ends meet and they have to make a paycheck and it's steady and pays. And so they would rather stick with what they know, I guess. And one of the other points that he was making, there were a whole lot of points he was making. The conversation was pretty deep. I like that Graham and Jack let him talk for quite a length of time in the middle parts, kind of about how TechLead addresses concepts of like the value of purchasing items and things. He was saying how he doesn't really value having a lot of material possessions because to him it's kind of a hassle to try to maintain stuff, to try to think about, like buying something fancy, buying something name brand. He sticks to basically what he needs and spends a lot more of his energy investing in his, passions. And Graham seems to be quite similar with, finding work as like a passion of his and the creative process of things and pouring himself into it. He seems to like nature and fish and ocean ocean life, that kind of thing. That seems to kind of be his passions outside of just the finance alone. And Graham was talking about how he believes, there was this conversation that I really liked towards the end, that Graham was talking about how he believes that, I mean, it wasn't black and white, but they were kind of going back and forth between this idea of, is it better to save to reach your financial goals, or is it better to invest to reach your financial goals? So investing, not necessarily meaning always like and put your money in the stock market. So when Graham was talking about saving, he was talking about, he made a point that, like, you know, you can save a certain amount of funds, and once that amount of money has been saved, you are once that amount of money gets saved, you're pretty much able to sorry, I'm blanking. I apologize. I'm looking at this lizard outside the window doing that little push-up thing on the side of a plant, a flower pot. Anyways, yeah, so saving versus investing. Graham was saying, okay, if I penny it, like earlier on, he was saying before he got into real estate investing, and owning properties that he would rent out, right? Before he got into that, he would like pinch pennies. He would save a lot, and he was saying he felt like he got more value out of saving, talking about when you get the dollar, say if you save $1, that dollar can get reinvested, versus if you make $1, you know, from a side hustle or whatever it may be, you're getting taxed off that dollar. So the dollar made is technically worth less than the dollar saved. And TechLead was saying, you know, that there is this situation that occurs where a lot of times people don't push someone to have a side hustle, to invest in themselves and, you know, start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, start a blog, start a website, like do work that produces income versus saving. So they were kind of having this conversation back and forth between like, okay, like the 401k or the 403b or whatever, retirement savings and, you know, all that kind of investing versus, you know, making money and potentially scaling up. So I don't really know what people think about that. I myself get a lot more joy out of maybe not so much taking a risk. That part is scary for me. Where I see, this is just my own personal take, where I see risks come up with the side hustles or with the extra money making opportunities, where I see risks come up is in a lot of areas. So let's just take podcasting, for example. A risk comes up when I'm participating in specific activities that are taking away from other activities. So say, for example, when I'm done working my 9 to 5, which is technically an 8 to 4, when I'm done working at 4 p.m., I log off. Say I finish work on time, I'm logged off 4 p.m. exactly on the dot. I have from 4 p.m. until technically what time? Like 10, let's say 10-ish. I probably wouldn't actually take on an activity that's going to take me until 10 o'clock. Like usually, even if I'm not asleep, I'm in bed at 10 on a weekday, or school night or whatever you want to call it. But that's a good 6 hours. So within that 6 hours, I have choices of things I can do. I'm going to eventually eat dinner. I'm likely going to do something creative. I'm likely going to do something entertaining. I may or may not have worked out during my lunch break or before work, so I might get some exercise. I might run an errand. Say if I spent about an hour doing each of these every day, I would still be an hour closer, at least on the podcasting end of things. I would have invested an hour's worth of time, but I still would have gotten, a sixth, like a small percentage of entertainment, which would maybe potentially be some form of relaxation, a small percentage of healthy, potentially the cooking or eating would be healthy, and potentially the exercise would be healthy. And then supposedly if I sleep on time and then I wake up, rinse, wash, repeat kind of thing. If I did that every day, every single thing that I did would be a little balanced, right? It would be pretty balanced. But I think naturally for myself, I would feel like maybe an hour free time isn't enough free time, So usually for my own self personally, because I start work at 8 a.m. and because I am awake before 8 a.m., I'm usually up before 7. I'm usually even up before 6, but usually up before 7. I have over an hour usually in the morning too. So that hour for me is kind of golden. I can decide what I want to do. Am I hydrating and drinking coffee? Am I thinking of ideas? Am I checking like stock charts? Am I, analyzing, like checking analytics? Am I planning out my day or different parts of my week? What am I doing? I'm usually not going to fully sleep in. But that hour, I can choose to be entertained or choose to do something creative or productive. But where the risk comes in, I notice for myself, is in the morning, I often do have this thought that I catch myself thinking it, and I notice in reality it's not accurate. I think, I can't get up yet. I can't get up now. First thing I'm thinking, I'm too tired. Second thing I'm thinking, I'm going to be tired later and regret that I woke up this early, right? Mind you, I very, very rarely, maybe I'll even giving myself the benefit of the doubt, let's say 10 times out of the year, I wake up early and go back to sleep and then wake up to my alarm that's set for 7:55, just enough time to log on to my computer to start working. So very, very, very rare. And I don't even think it's 10 times that I sleep to my alarm. Like this year so far, I think I've done it once. And we're already almost to the halfway point. So it's very rare for me to sleep to my alarm, meaning that naturally my body's not going to go back to sleep anyways. Now, a lot of times I can choose to lay there and try to sleep, and then my mind is just wandering into this space that tends to be a little negative because it's like, okay, I'm usually not properly hydrated. I don't properly have, calories in my system, and blood sugar is kind of low. That kind of, I might be slightly on the verge of hangry and a little bit like maybe foggy, groggy. So I feel a little bit like laying around until 7:55 a.m. when I start logging in for the 8 a.m. shift. I feel like even though in my head I feel like I'm gonna not be able to feel okay with like doing something productive, I feel like it's counterproductive to start my morning in a negative headspace, because then I don't want to start work. And then by the time I start work, I'm like, I'm like drained already. I've been thinking for over an hour, like 90 minutes or so, or 2 hours worth of just like negativity and just like whatever. So I have options, right? Because that's the risk. The risk that I'm perceiving that I'm going to be tired later. And I think about it and I'm like, I drink enough caffeine in the day. to not be that groggy and tired, right? So I think early in the morning, I've kind of like thought about it more, and I'm like, even in my mind, I perceive that there's a potential risk to waking up and getting out of bed, or just even laying there. A lot of this stuff I can do laying in bed. I can read analytics while I'm in bed. I can listen to other podcasts. I can watch, stock market YouTube videos like Kevin, what's his name? Meet Kevin, and like Andre Jick, and, the Millennial Money podcast with all those guys on it. And like, I can sit there and listen to that stuff and get educated about kind of current updates on stocks, looking at Robinhood, just seeing kind of what's been going on with my stocks, with other stocks, just listening to stock news, reading stock news, or just my own analytics for my own projects and things, and just kind of analyzing where things are and what content is maybe the most valuable to produce and to work on. And then I can know where I'm going with the rest of my day. And when I do start working on things, or, starting to put money here or there or whatever, then I know what I'm doing because I've taken the time to research it. Usually in the mornings before work, for me, that's the best time to do those things, because those are the things I'm likely going to put off, because it's like, I don't want to like look into this when I'm like off of work or when I'm supposed to be having free time. After work, the problem is, I usually think that I need more free time to veg. I tell myself I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm stressed, I don't want to do anything. But I notice that's the worst thing for me to do if I do it every single day. Now, there are days where I'm like, usually I tell myself Wednesday or Thursday, I'm like, this is the day that I usually give myself one day a week where I'm only doing paperwork at work. I'm not really doing any session work or any major like emotional kind of work with clients too much. Unless they call in, of course I'm going to talk to them, but I'm not like actively reaching out. And I'm not doing, there's a lot that I'm not doing that I would usually be doing. So I give myself a relaxed day at work. I'm still working the whole day, but I'm not doing like the most intensive type of stuff. And then usually that same day I tell myself no errands, and anything that I want, I'm going to order it. I'm going to order in. So I'm ordering food, or if I need groceries, I'll order groceries. Like, I tell myself I don't have to leave the house, and I almost force myself to stay home for a whole full day. And usually it's because like some weekends I don't even stay home. So I give myself a day where I just don't do anything. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, if I want to do it, I'll do it. But I usually don't I usually choose a lazy kind of day, right? And so I know it's coming in the week. But how many of those do I need realistically, including weekends? Because I get 2 full days of the weekend off. Because I don't usually run errands during the weekends, because I usually do errands after work if I'm going to do them, so that I don't have to do them on the weekend. I usually have weekends completely free unless I've made plans with friends or something like that. And then, so yeah, it's kind of like a myth for myself that I need that much relaxation after work. I don't need to relax from 4 to 10 p.m. and then on top of that go to sleep every day. That's 6 hours wasted that I could have been doing something, where I realize momentum creates momentum. Now, there is a point where you can work too hard and overdo it. And there is a point where it's like you do need a rest, you do need to relax, and you do need a break. But a lot of times, too, it is mindset. And so I do have to remind myself, I feel better when I exercise. I feel better when I work out. I feel better when I get vitamin D. I feel better when I do like grounding and earthing exercises, and put your feet in the sand, or put your feet in the ocean water, or put your feet in some dirt or on some grass. Just connect inside of nature physically without the soles of your rubber shoes or whatever. Like, it does feel better. It feels better to participate in meditation and self-care and self-help, and to grow, like participate in personal growth and self-healing types of things at the very least. And it also feels good to produce things, to create things, whether that's drawing or poetry or painting or podcasting or just writing a blog post or something. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I record and that I write, or maybe even draw, or even music that I make. I don't post it anywhere. I don't release it anywhere. I don't put it anywhere. But even just the creative process is just very uplifting, right? It helps a lot, and it makes the mind sharper. It kind of helps to focus on things that to me are important, which is another dilemma that comes up, where it's like, at some point, what am I creating for myself and what am I creating for others? I do find that it's helpful to create for myself when I just don't care about anything. But then, it does help to actually create to give back as well. So it's nice to find that balance of something I'm creating for myself versus something someone else might find valuable, such as this episode currently. I feel like, to me, it's valuable because it's what I actually do want to talk about today. And someone else might like it too, because, people who log into this podcast, they tend to like to listen to things about finances and kind of self-help and motivation and things like that. So people out there might listen to it. People out there might follow Graham Stefan. People out there might, like to hear other perspectives related to those types of topics. And so that's why I'm recording this. But, the second I start doing it purely for other people, it kind of depends what it is that I'm doing purely for other people. If I'm bitter about it, it's not going to help or work or be worth the risk of the energy and time, right? Because energy and time spent is a form of a risk. And so that's kind of how I see it, is that, what I'm noticing for my own personal life is that there is the risk involved. Risk doesn't always mean something bad, but sometimes it can be seen as something that could potentially be not so positive. Is it always not positive? It kind of depends on your mindset around it. But a lot of times I feel like, we say this thing in psychology a lot, that people seek pleasure and avoid pain. And risk is seen as a potential sort of pain. People don't like to deprive themselves of stuff, and if you don't have like a main reason why or goal you're working towards, it might be kind of hard to deprive yourself of certain things. It might be kind of hard to sit through certain things. Like school is one of those examples. If you don't like school, or if you don't like learning, that's hard, because you have to spend from age 5 to age 18, and then possibly even going to college for 4 years, or then add another 2 to 3 years for grad school. And you'll be in school for like ages, and that's a long time. And then some people think, okay, I'd rather just work. But if you're not passionate about your job, especially if you're not making the income that you want and you're not doing what you want to actually do, that's a risk in itself, to have to work at a job like that for however many years just to get a paycheck. If that's what it feels like, that doesn't feel good. It's like you're spending all your time and energy until something eventually, once you're 60 or whatever and retire, then you get to like relax and not do that anymore. So that's kind of what I kind of, boil it all down to, is kind of the risk involved and where you feel like you have risk, and what actually is happening. Because there is the feeling that this is potentially going to be a risk. Like, is the effort I do on this end going to pay off? When I wake up early in the morning, is the effort I put into hobbies and side hustles and things like that going to pay off more than trying to sleep when I know I'm not going to sleep realistically, right? Is the effort put into working on side hustles or exercising or eating clean and all these things going to be worth the deprivation of entertainment and just letting loose every night after work and maybe having some whiskey and smoking a bowl and doing all these things versus, focusing still after you just worked the whole day, or like exercising and getting your body in shape. If you don't see the results immediately or quickly or the way that you want them to be, it's hard to consistently keep up the risk. So also knowing what that risk looks like and where is your stopping point for yourself, that can be helpful. So thanks for listening to this. It's just a tidbits episode. I hope you like it. Check out the podcast for Iced Coffee Hour and continue to have a good weekend, you guys. Have a good week. Thanks for listening.